All right, Shalom. You reached the Heat Pray channel. My name is Isaac Mawar. First and foremost, I want to say, call Halayim, Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Harachakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Gabdallah, Chaim, which is great millstone in the Lashawan Tahar, where I learned this truth from, who rule well. Salutations to the Bakiyar, the elect. 144,000. That's 12,000 men from each of the 12 tribes of Yasha Allah. 144. Yasha Allah consists of you so-called blacks, Latinos, and indigenous of America. The 144,000 represents the governing body within the one-third. The rest of the one-third comprises of elect men, women, and children. Shalom to those Israelites scattered due to the diaspora and also the triangular trade. So our people come looking like different ethnicities, having various complexions. So it's not a black thing. We're not the black Hebrew Israelites. We're just Hebrew Israelites. Shalom to those that died in this truth. It says the dead should be raised up first. Those that will be accompanying Yahweh Shah on his return, including our King, King Mashah, who is King David. And as always, it's an honor and privilege, honor and blessing to continue to do this work. The water Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah Ba'ashem Harachach for answering my prayers and permitting me to do such. Baba Shah Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah allowed us to be an edifying lesson to at least one member of the elect. Before I got to go to work, got to leave out of here in about an hour and a half, less than an hour and a half. Beat the morning traffic. But I wanted to curtail on the spirit dealing with Isaiah chapter 4, verse 1, which, you can see it clear as day, especially when they finally grow the nutsack to attack Iran. And you see all hell break loose. You see the sleeper cells activated. You see gas going up. You see, grocery store prices skyrocket. There's going to be a lot of desperation, a lot of, skirmishes, fighting, killing all throughout America, which is going to collapse the system as we know it. Man, through the spirit, I believe that the majority of the dead is going to be you so-called black women. Which, a lot of you burn your bridges, But without further ado, considering, time, let's go to Isaiah chapter 32. I'm going to start at the top. It says the glorious future. So this future that Isaiah is describing, should be glorious in your mind. So Isaiah chapter 32, verse 1, it says, behold, a king shall reign in righteousness, and princes shall rule in judgment. Right, so the kingdom of heaven is going to be established upon earth with, the proper order. Yahweh Shah, King David, and the rest of the elect, ruling the world, right? Barak Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah, the water Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah, Salak Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah. Also dealing with the princes, which is you Israelites. You're going to be judges upon earth, right? It says, and a man shall be as a hiding place from the wind, right? And when you go precept upon precept, that word wind word wind, hold on, that word wind represents destruction, which this is a Babylon judge for sins against Israel. So we know the word Babel goes into the Hebrew word Babel, or Slaki, the word Babylon goes into the Hebrew word Babel, which means confusion. And America's going to be judged for what is done to the jewels of the Heavenly Father, which is his people. You Israelites, you so-called blacks, Latinos, and indigenous. So this is Jeremiah chapter 51, verse 1. It says, Thus saith Yahweh, Behold, I will raise up against Babylon, aka America, and against them that dwell in the midst of them that rise up against me. So all the enemies of Yahweh Bashem Yahushua, a destroying wind, which is that nuclear destruction, right? So going back to Isaiah chapter 32, verse 2, and a man shall be as a hiding place from the destruction, from the chaos, from the perils, the dangers. It says in the covert, from the tempest. Let me see if they define that word. No. Let's go back to Copilot for the word covert, which is Macbeth, Macabre, Seether, hiding place, covert, a secret, sheltered place, protection from danger. Right? So you women should seek a man of Yahweh Bashem Yahushua that has the doctrine of great millstone for protection from danger. Right? It says in a covert from the tempest, as rivers of water in a dry place, which is when you're in a desert, you're dehydrated and you're becoming weaker from thirst. When you see, a river flowing with, moving water and it looks refreshing, you know, so a man is going to be refreshing, a refreshment onto, you select, or I should say, elected women. It says, as the shadow of a great rock in a weary land, because the shadow of a great rock, when you're behind a rock in a weary land, you're uneasy about it. Right? Think horror movie. You hide underneath that great rock for protection. So that's what a man in Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushua is going to be onto you women in these days. But a lot of you already dropped the ball. And there's a lot of you that's going to drop the ball. So let's go back to the keywords. Malak, which means king. Root idea, one who reigns, governs, sets order. So your man, your husband is your king, who has authority over you, right? It says one who reigns, governs, and sets order, right? So a lot of you women, you're going to have to swallow your pride, man. Because a lot of you women, you want to be the boss. You don't have the genetic makeup for it. Most High didn't create you to be the boss. He created you to be the servant. And really, he created you, for the man. If you were created for the man, what aspect of your existence is most beneficial? Because it ain't your mouth. It ain't your conversation, you know. What do you think these men are going to want from you when all hell breaks loose and they don't have any law and order? You can't call 911. I think it's Tazadak, righteousness, justice, right order, conformity to the standard of Yahweh. And that's what your husband is to teach you. The standard, the ways of Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah, the law, statutes, commandments, how you're supposed to conduct yourself as a woman, what your place is, what your role is. Everyone has a role. And everyone's role is unique and beneficial in itself. And it needs to have occupancy. Each role, the word wind, ruach, or rakah, can be literal wind or spiritual force, which in this case is dealing with the wind of destruction, the destroying wind. So as later in verse 15, the spirit from on high. So let's go down real quick in Isaiah chapter 32. I'm going to go down to verse 9. It says, rise up, ye women that are at ease. When you women, you're not on guard. You're in la la land, and it's going to hit you women the hardest when things go awry, when society collapses. Because this whole time you've been having your head up your ass, man. With your ass out. So you're at ease. Your list of things to do are very minimal. Which all evolve around seeking attention, right? It says, hear my voice. So the voice that you should be hearing are the men that are teaching these scriptures the right way. Those that are prophesying, those that are confessing the doctrine of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah that was given to Great Millstone, right? It says, ye careless daughters, give ear unto my speech. And out of all you careless daughters, because only, you women of Israel could be the daughters, it's you Judite women that are the worst. And you're going to get it the worst, man. That's why the Most High made the majority of you unattractive, of burning instead of beauty. Judgment was given before each and every one of us was even born. What our last end may be, right? So, a lot of you women, your last end is going to be destruction. It says, many days and years shall you be troubled, ye careless women, for the vintage shall fail. The vintage is almost, you deal with wine, especially if you grew up in California. It's called wine country. And the vintage is like, the it's like the production, the production that the vineyards produced, you know, which you could equate that to, these men catering to these women in sip mode, sap suckers, you know, paying their phone, paying their nails, paying their hair. They got a different nigga for different shit. They might have one nigga that go and pick up the kids from school. They might have another nigga that just for, licking it. Then they might have another nigga just to blow their back out, man. All that is gonna fail, man. It says the gathering shall not come, because it's pretty much gonna be everybody for themselves, man. Except, those that have this truth. We understand what's going on, so our spirit is glued to the betterment of each other, the protection of each other, even if it costs us our own lives, right? Because we have that understanding that, no greater love is one who dies for his friends, right? Verse 11, it says, tremble ye women that are at ease. So all you women out there that are at ease, man, on Instagram, on these dating sites, BLK, Bumble dating, right now, if the Most High open up your mind to the hell that you're about to catch, you be trembling. Because the majority of you just fan off the words of, Jake men because they're not in power right now. You respect the man that is in power. But if you see what's going on geopolitically, the man in power, his power is waning. He's losing his power. He's losing that intimidation because people are seeing him for, the emperor with no clothes that he is. Shame is being seen. It says, be troubled, ye careless ones, strip you and make you bare. So just like what happened in 2020, which was a pre-run, the Most High, he's going to strip you women of all your shit, man. You ain't going to be able to get your hair done, your nails done. They're going to be locking cities down. You ain't going to be able to go to a all girls vacation, because they're going to be locking these cities down. These stores, they're going to be closing down and shutting down. The internet, they're going to have to cut the internet off, especially if they're sleeper cells, because they got to eliminate all communication. The power, what if they cut the power off? It never ends well in the movies concerning you women when there's natural disasters. It says, and gird sackcloth upon your loins. Like sackcloth is, attire for mourning, because according to our culture, we dressed uh, according to, our status. I say, right? It says they shall lament for the teats, for the pleasant fields, for the fruitful vine. Yeah, it's gonna hurt them the hardest. They're gonna wish that they, appreciated the Cheesecake Factory a little bit more. They're gonna wish that, they wasn't tripping on going 50-50, or even shit outright paying for the dinner herself. Shame on her for thinking that she was the prize. These women aren't the prize, man. You know, and I'm sure none of them have that same energy as far as ego when they're asshole naked, man. Because a lot of them look like jack shit, out of shape, lumps, all looking like the back of fucking the thing. You know, so they're gonna reminisce about how good it was just a week ago. It says, upon the land of my people shall come up thorns and briars. Yeah, upon all the houses of joy in the joyous city. Thorns and briars represent drought. That's what is produced when there's a drought. So the Most High is going to take away the joy from you people, man, especially you women, because really this is a woman centered and geared society, man. Everything is directed toward the woman because she's the most easiest to be deceived. That's why a lot of you women, you got 5, 7, 8, 10 baby daddies, man. And each and every one of you, each and every last one of them tricked you out your genes. This is not how it's supposed to work. Verse 14, it says, because the palaces shall be forsaken, all these different clubs, the buildings, even these stadiums, they're going to really shut this country down, man. Them attacking Iran means all hell breaking loose. Don't mean, oh, they're just going to bomb the hell out of another country. No, this war is prophetic, and America is prophesied to lose, man. It says the multitude of the city shall be left, the forts and the towers shall be dens forever. A joy of wild asses, a pasture of flocks. Right, because this country is going to get turned into a desert after being hit with thermonuclear missiles. Go to back to co-pilot. I'll just keep going to verse 18. Verse 15, it says, until the Spirit be poured upon us from on high, and the wilderness be a fruitful field, and the fruitful field be counted for a forest. Right, so, the Spirit is being poured onto the elect right now through the words of Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. And then the kingdom of heaven, which is soon to be physically established, right, after America is destroyed, also understanding that the kingdom is within us, right? It says, then judgment shall dwell in the wilderness, and the righteousness remain in the fruitful field, and the work of righteousness shall be peace, and the effect of righteousness, quietness, and assurance forever. And my people shall dwell in a peaceable habitation and in sure dwellings. We don't have a peaceable habitation here in America. We don't have sure dwellings here in America. They can kick you out of your house, which they're about to do. It says, and in quiet resting places. There's no quiet resting places, man, because, our people, they got the curses on them, man. So even when it gets quiet, sooner or later, you're going to hear the nigger woman screaming on top of her lungs because, she don't give a fuck about anybody else, not even, other people until, they get their brain blown out. Then everybody wants to talk about how good the bitch was, and the bitch was shit. It says, when it shall hail coming down on the forest, and the city shall be low in a low place. Blessed are ye that sow beside all waters, which waters also represents the truth, that send forth thither the feet of the ox and the ass. So I'm gonna go to Proverbs chapter 18, verse 10. It says, the name of Yahweh is a strong tower. The righteous runneth into it and is safe. Right. And part of that is, you women getting with a man of Yahweh Bashim Yahushua so he could teach you the proper names in order for you to be saved, have the angels protecting you, through your prayers. Let me see, 1 Corinthians 11 and 3. So this was to the Israelites in Corinth. This is 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 3. It says, but let me make sure. I'm going to start at the top. This is 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 1. It says, be ye followers of me, even as I also am of Hamashiach. Right. So Paul was an individual that was following after the example in which Yahweh Shah had left, and plus Paul was taught by Yahweh Shah himself when he was stoned and momentarily went to the spirit world. You know, it says, "Now I praise you, brethren, that ye remember me in all things and keep the ordinances as I delivered them to you." Right. So you gotta maintain and keep the things in which we learn. You know, it has to become you, has to be, uh, more precious than your third leg, man. You know, following that righteous spirit. It says, "But I would have you know that the head of every man is Hamashiach, and the head of the woman is the man." So the head of the woman in righteous order is the man. But in this society, the roles are reversed through, so-called white man who is the devil, who is Esau. It says, "In the head of Hamashiach is Yahweh." So it says, GMS style breakdown verses 1 through 2 ultimately points to Yahweh Shah as the king, but also trickles down to the men under him. A man in order becomes a hiding place, not just emotionally, but literally in famine, war, and chaos. Verse 9 through 11, it says, "The women at ease are warned before the spirit is poured and the full judgments hits. Comfort gets interrupted, so they'll seek proper covering." Verses 15 through 18, it says, "Once the spirit is poured, you get judgment plus righteousness plus peace. That's the environment where a righteous man becomes visibly valuable." AI commentary. In movie terms, Isaiah 32 is the setup of the plot. The world is unstable, leadership is corrupt, women are comfortable and careless. And then a righteous king and righteous man step into the frame. When the spirit hits, the judgment starts. The man who already built discipline, order, and fear of Yahweh becomes the safe house, the bunker, the water source. That's why he gets the girls. Not as a simp fantasy, but because in crisis, utility plus righteousness equals attraction plus dependence. So let's go to Isaiah chapter 4. This is Isaiah chapter 4, verse 1. It says, "And in that day, 7 women," which the number 7 in biblical numerology just is a number for completion. So a complete amount, whatever amount Yahweh has ordained for you to have, right? "Shall take hold of one man." So one man could possibly have 100 women. It says, saying, "We will eat our own bread and wear our own apparel." And they're saying that pluralized, not "I will eat" or I will eat my own bread or eat it. It says "our," like as if it's plural, like as if there's more than one woman. So these women are going to have a change of heart when it concerns, sharing and caring. They're going to have to stomach it, right? And have sister wives, which is really a beautiful thing if it's done righteously. It says, "We will eat our own bread and wear our own apparel. Only let us be called by thy name to take away our reproach, their shame." You know. So going back to Copilot, key Hebrew words, Shah, says Shah, I think it's Shabbat, 7, often completeness, here, in many women, disproportionate ratio. Na Sham, or Nashayim, women, plural of woman, the feminine side of the nation. By Ayash of a man, man as individual, but also representative of the male role. Uh, Sham, name, not just label, reputation, authority, lineage, covenant, identity. Harapa, uh, reproach, shame, disgrace, social and covenantal stigma. You know, yeah. But for sake of time, I'm not gonna be able to finish it. I gotta get in the shower, get ready. I don't know how long this day is gonna be. So yeah, I'll finish it up and make a series of it. So with that, I hope at least one brother of the elect was edified, and I'm gonna say shalom.